Hey, did you know that the census is due this year on April 1st? And guess what? This time we can finally count as Caribbean. This year, all you have to do is 1. Check the race box, and 2. Write in your country of birth or ancestry. You can answer by the paper form, online, or by phone. Everybody counts in Census 2020. So count as Caribbean. Yes, we count.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to Ride Along. Let's share. I see Tamika has shared. Tamika, you shared. Genevieve, you've shared. This is Deani Winter. I'm going to be your host for today. So we're going to wait for everyone to come in, and then we'll get started. Good evening, Doris. Good evening, Shante, and thank you for sharing. If you share, just go ahead, drop and say you share, and let me know where you're sharing from. Whether you're in Grenada, if you're in Jamaica, if you're in New York, just say I share Bronx, New York, or I share. Go ahead, Lydia, just let me know you share. Hi, Lacey. Lacey, it's a junior breakdown again. We're going to have a fun time. You know, we can't do this without Junior. We're standing on Junior's platform today. So everybody come in. Good evening, Brooklyn. Oh, my God. Good evening to London. June Noel Park from London. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Chanel Charles from Brooklyn, New York. Thank you for sharing. Everybody, when you're joining us, I want you to share at least to 2 or 3 groups that you belong to. So make sure you're sharing, because today's going to be a good show. I want Junior to be proud of me, and I want you all to have a good time with me. Thank you, Dr. Zarina, for sharing. Tamika from Brooklyn, thank you for sharing. Toronto, Miss Lydia James from Toronto. What is it? What's going on in Toronto, Miss James? Tell us. Keep sharing, keep sharing. Shante Kelsey Charles from Trinidad. Wow, welcome to the show. Thank you for sharing. Wendy, thank you for sharing, Wendy. Where are you sharing from? Thank you, everybody, for sharing and joining us. Oh my gosh, California, West Coast, thank you for sharing. So today we're going to have a really, 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 really good show. We're going to give everybody about another minute to join us, and then we're going to get into our immigration talk. So, you know, when I come on, we're always going to talk immigration. We can talk other things too, but we're going to talk immigration. So if you're just joining us, go ahead, share to all your friends. Let them know Junior's in the building. Deani's covering for Junior. Thanks, guys, for sharing. All right. Hello to Ronald from Venezuela. Hello. So we're at the 5 minute mark. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. My name is Attorney Diani Winter Funde, and I am an immigration law practitioner in Tampa, Florida. And yes, Miss Rogers Jr. is okay. I hope you like my face. I know Junior isn't here today, but we're going to try to hold it down for Junior. So today we're going to have a really fun show lined up. We're going to talk immigration. We're going to talk about the latest in immigration. Then we're going to go back to the I-130 a little bit that we picked up, that we left off last week. And then in the last segment, we're going to have you ask me anything live, meaning any questions you have pertaining to immigration, whether it's the form that we're going to review today or whether it have anything to do with the form, we can still talk. You can ask me anything about it. So my name is Attorney Deanna Winter. I have been on this show quite a number of times. I'm an immigration practitioner based in Tampa, Florida. However, most of you I've either spoken to or you've seen me on this show before. So I'm always covering immigration topics. Why? I am an immigrant. I grew up in Jamaica, then I immigrated to the United States. And so my passion for immigration is personal because I went through the immigration process myself, and I also helped my family to go through the immigration process. So through that, I've always stayed true and intimate to the practice of immigration law. So one of the main reasons behind this show is to keep you all up to date. What do I mean? Immigration law is always changing. It is always changing. And so it is important that we let the community know what's changed and how it is changing. All right. Thanks, Lydia. No, I don't think Junior has COVID, but Junior is doing fine. Junior is doing fine. I'm just covering for Junior today. So what's new in immigration? The biggest change we're seeing so far is the furlough of USCIS staff. If you've watched the show before, you know who the staff is. USCIS is the agency that oversees all things immigration. What do I mean by that? So for those individuals that are filing a petition, USCIS is the administrative arm that oversees all those applications. So if USCIS is not fully staffed, then we know it's going to take a longer time to process those applications. If you recall, we spent some time last week talking about the I-130. Typically, when you put all your application form together, you drop it in the mail and it goes to USCIS. Now, what the president has done is we've cut back on a lot of immigration. We've seen a lot of restrictions on immigration. And so because of that, USCIS is losing a lot of money. USCIS is a fee for service, meaning they make their revenue based on the fees that you and I and our family members pay them. That is how they make their money. So if they have any kind of restrictions or interruptions, so restriction number one was the president restricting what was happening. Then restriction number two, good evening to Ms. Ferguson from USVI. Then restriction number two was COVID. Once that happened, then the service started having some financial difficulties. And from what I understand, over 13,000 individuals will be laid off. That is a lot of employees. So for all we know, we're going to experience, if USCIS is not funded by by Congress, because they're trying to seek some funds, they're asking for a little bit over $1 billion in order to continue going. So if these funds are not received, then we could see a definite slowdown with USCIS, especially in processing those applications. All right, so that's kind of like the latest that we see going on with USCIS. Another thing, a lot of calls we're getting is, and if I have anybody from Grenada in the house, let me know, but I was informed that Grenada has now closed their borders. They're back to closing their borders. So initially, Grenada had reopened, and now I hear they're now closed, so nobody can get in. So a lot of the calls that we're getting is that people do want to extend their status because they're unable to depart. Again, due to all of what's going on with USCIS, I think it's important that whatever application you have to file, if it's an extension of status or if it's an I-130, we'll talk about that a little bit later, you are definitely want to file with enough time in advance. And I always tell people, don't file your application and make travel plans. So don't say, I'm going to file my application and then I'm going to plan to travel. Like, I want to file my application now so I could travel in December. That is not how the service works. The service works on when your application is filed, the processing times that are allowed. So one application could take a certain amount of time depending on the category or the preference category that you're in. So with the layoffs and COVID, you can certainly experience longer wait times. So that's one of the big things that's going on with USCIS. This should not prevent you from filing your application. Extension of status for all my friends from Grenada, all my friends that are from Grenada and Grenada closed, I would recommend don't file the extension of status right away. Don't file it yet, only because I don't know, because I know Grenada was promised to reopen and then they ended up not opening. I think, right, Lydia, it wasn't open at all. It was promised to open on July 1st, but they changed. So for some people, the I-94, if you have that I-94, it is important that you watch the date. Typically, I would say to file your extension of the I-94 within 45 days. However, because things are changing on a daily basis, I would say to hang tight to that I-9, to filing that extension of status until we are for certain that the countries will not reopen. I say that for two reasons. One, they will understand the late filing, it's due to COVID. And two, you can save a couple dollars in your pocket. Remember to file that extension of status, the I-539, it costs a little bit of money. It's almost $400 or $500. So it would be not smart if you file the extension of status and then lo and behold, the country opens and your I-94 did not expire, so you can depart. So in that case, I would say hang tight, watch the flights, listen to the media, and see if and when your country reopens and if it's okay for you to depart. So that's kind of where we are with the latest in immigration. I see one question: why are the officers being laid off? Well, USCIS operates, Lydia, on a fee for service. So when we file our petitions, when we file our applications, that is how they make revenue. If you notice, any business you have with USCIS, you have to pay. If you're filing an I-130, there's a fee. If you're filing an N-400, there's a fee. Anything at all, fingerprints, there's an $85 fee. So if at any point that fees or those applications are being interrupted, as we have seen with the president, one, we've seen the restrictions lately on the H-1B. Prior to that, we saw the restrictions for certain family members that are overseas. So that have essentially interrupted the fee in service agreements, or that's how USCIS make their money. That has been interrupted. So because of that, they're now predicting that they will be operating on a deficit. In other words, they won't be making enough money, so there's no way for them to continue operating the way they are. So that's why we see where USCIS will be laying off furlough. It actually says a furlough, and it probably will go on for 30 days. So that's what we're seeing so far. If you have questions about the furlough and whether this will affect your application, leave those towards the end of the segment, and then we can talk a little bit about what it will look like, what the delay may or may not look like. All right. Vic, I see you say you work for USCIS for a year, and I'm absolutely correct about the information you're putting in. Thank you so much. So you can be my co-host for the day because you can tell me about what goes on in the inside of USCIS on the life of an application. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, let's pick up where we left off last week on the I-130 application. Remember, we talked a little bit about who will file the I-130 application. In the ideal world, I would love if everybody who is preparing an immigration application consulted with an attorney. That would be very much ideal. However, I understand that not everybody can afford an attorney, and that is why it's important to know that there are resources. So you do not have to fill this application out blindly. So I've pulled up for you the I-130 application. This application you can find for yourself at uscis.gov. USCIS.gov will have this application. And essentially, this is the application you would file if you want to petition for a parent, a spouse, a child, maybe a sister, maybe a brother. So there has to be some kind of familial relationship in order to file this application. As you can see with the application, we're going to scroll down. We did this last week, but I still kind of want, if you didn't join us last week, you can kind of see how this application works. Part 1, it talks about the familial relationship. So as you can see, it says either a spouse, a parent, a brother, sister, or a child. So you see, I'm not making this stuff up. It is right there on the applications. So sometimes you say, oh, I want to talk to a lawyer because I need to file for so-and-so. You can say, look, I watched Junior's show and that lawyer says we can go to uscis.gov and see who we can petition for. In this case, if you look at line 1, it says who you're filing for, a spouse, a parent, a brother or sister, or a child. If you are not filing for any of those, for example, you say you want to file for your uncle, there's no box for uncle, there's no box for auntie, there's no box for girlfriend. So you cannot file for any of those. So the familial relationship has to fit within this file. Does that make sense? In addition, this will also ask information on you. So what this form essentially does is to prove that a relationship exists between you and the person you are filing for. In the immigration world, if you're filling out this form on behalf of someone, you are the petitioner. If you are the person you're filling out the form on the behalf of is the beneficiary. So you will have to provide information on this I-130 as it pertains to you. What kind of information are they asking for? Your name. They want your address. If you scroll down to page 2, you can see the additional information that this application is asking for. They're asking you, where do you live? What is your physical address? How long have you lived at this address? Who's collecting your mail? In care of who? And it asks you to list your address a couple of times. It also asks you to list your past address. So they essentially are collecting your address history. Typically, this I-130 application will ask you for your address that goes 5 years back. That's how long of the address they will need. And as I mentioned, it is important if a block on this application does not apply to you, I want you to put not applicable or none. Do not put that, do not leave it blank. And I want to stress again, the important part, it's the parental relationship, it's a spousal relationship, brother or sister. So it can't be grandma filing for a grandchild. It has to fall within that relationship. Let's keep scrolling down and see what else they're asking us for. All right, information about you. Remember when I said you're the petitioner? So if you're the one filing on the behalf of someone else, you are the petitioner. What they also want to know about you are your marriages, name of all your spouses. So for those individuals that are filing for a spouse, your marital history will come into play. Is this the third or fourth person you're filing for or petitioning for? The service wants to know because they want to know, is this marriage legitimate? Is this marriage bona fide? So they will ask you, spouse number one, what is that spouse's name? Spouse number two, what is that spouse's name? Spouse number three. If you have 4 or 5 former spouses, then what you can do is you can write an addendum. So you write a sheet of paper and you put the question number and you add the additional spouses on that sheet of paper if you run out of room on the I-130 to list your spouse. Let's go back to the form. The other information they're asking you for is where were you born? Again, this is simply data collection. A question I get a lot is on the next one on parents' information. For some people, they may know mommy, they may not know daddy, or they may not remember their parents' birth date. I would say what you can do, scroll back up a little bit for me. Let's look at the parents' information. That is question number, information about your parents. So if you don't have the information on your dad, I want you to put not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. Complete every single box. If you don't know your mother's date of birth, complete NA. If you're doing this online, it may not take 0000000 for date of birth. But once you print the application, you can use a black ink pen and you can insert not applicable so it doesn't apply to you. So this goes for those individuals that may know mom's information, but they don't know their father's information or vice versa. Moving on to the next part, it talks about information about you. Remember, you are the petitioner, right? So it says, are you a U.S. citizen? Are you a lawful permanent resident? These are questions that you should be able to answer. It will also ask you question 39A, how did you arrive at your United States citizenship? And that's when you put in your certificate number, okay? Let's keep scrolling down. And I see your questions off to my right. I am going to get to them. Mia, you can apply for, where did my screen go? You can apply for a child. You can definitely apply for a child, even if the child is in the United States. And I'll be able to answer that for you in a bit. So I see you say, can you file an I-130 for a child who is here in the United States undocumented? I said, Mia, I meant Mo. The answer is yes, you can. Yes, you can file for a child who is undocumented in the United States. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at is, as we scroll further down, it wants your employment history. This goes into, again, data collection, and it also plays into those individuals that are petitioning for someone else. It also goes into the affidavit of support, right? So when it comes time to do the affidavit of support, we want to make sure that you're financially able. So this is where you would put that data, the name of your employer, the address of your employer, your occupation. This is all data collection, all right? So you should go ahead and fill this out to the best of your ability. The next part is just the biographic information. You can scroll through that. It just puts your ethnicity. So as you see, these forms should not be intimidating. This is what us attorneys are doing. We ask you for the information and then we populate these forms so that we can submit on your behalf. Keep in mind, it is incumbent on you that every information we put in this form on your behalf is accurate, because you're going to be signing this form when we submit, and you're also going to be signing or comparing your signature at your interview. So it's important that you know the information we're putting in. If you've been married twice and we've only listed once, you need to correct the attorney and say, hey, you missed one of my marriages. I need to include that. All right, let's keep scrolling down. We're almost done. We're going to scroll through this form really quickly. The next part is information about the beneficiary. So this is going to be who? Who was our beneficiaries? We said parent, we said spouse, we said child, we said brother, we said sister. Those are the beneficiaries. It cannot be a grandchild. It cannot be a grandchild, okay? It can be an adoptive child. If you've adopted a child, you can petition for that child as well. Legally adopted, not, oh, when the child was 4, I took the child to come live with me and I raised the child. That is not a legal relationship. So it has to be legal. It cannot be a custodial relationship either, meaning, oh, you know, the mother signed a little piece of paper and said, we can take care of the child. To petition for the child has to be legally adopted. USCIS will look to the laws of the country and to make sure the adoption took place legally. All right. So that answers a question about whether what child you can apply for. So this is the beneficiary's full name. As you recall, we talked about who is our beneficiary. Our beneficiary is the individual that you are filing for. Many times they will not have an A number because remember, if this is the first time, if they're overseas or they're in the country undocumented, they won't have an alien registration number. You can leave that line blank. USCIS account, if you don't have an account, you leave blank, you put NA. If your beneficiary does not have a social security number, go ahead and put not applicable. If your beneficiary entered the country on an H-2B, so they came in and they were working on an H-2B or an H-1B or an L or some other legal category, then more than likely they will have a social security number. So we want to go ahead and put that information in. Rule of thumb, if you don't have the information, NA not applicable will work. All right. So beneficiary's full name, other names the beneficiary has used. So this part of the application has everything to do with the individual you're filing for. There is no expectation that you'll be able to complete every block. For example, zip codes. In the Caribbean, we don't have zip codes, so you can put none. Right? But you write your address as to how it is in the Caribbean, or if the beneficiary is living in the United States, then that's an easy fix. Other address and contact information. Again, this entire section has to do with your beneficiary. Who are you applying for? Let's scroll down. Still beneficiary. So this place of current marriage, that will have to do if you're filing for a spouse. So if you are a man or a woman and you're filing for a spouse, this is the part you're going to talk about your current marriage. They also want to know the name of the beneficiary's spouses, if any. So if we see where the individual has been married quite a few times, then this is where the question of multiple marriages will come in. For example, if we see where our beneficiary, this is marriage number 3 or number 4. This is petition number 3 or number 4. We call that a red flag. That we would call that a red flag because we say these are too many marriages. We call that multiple marriages. All right, we can scroll down. So you kind of see this form kind of speaks for itself and picks up for itself. Again, more information about beneficiary, beneficiary's entry information. Scroll back up a little bit, Junior. So one of the things we want to talk about is the beneficiary's entry information. This is as to whether question number 45. If the beneficiary is already residing in the United States, their lawful entry is super important because that means they can adjust their status. I'll repeat that. If your beneficiary has entered the United States lawfully, then they can adjust their status here. So this part of the document is super important. If your beneficiary walked across the border, like they walked from El Paso into the United States, they were not inspected paroled or admitted, those are the things we're looking for, then they cannot adjust in the United States. We would have to do a waiver for them to go back home and come back in. So this little part in the document, you need to have your beneficiary's travel document number. That is the passport. And we also are going to need that I-94. That is the entry document that when you land, Custom and Border Patrol will give you that I-94. So keep that in mind, okay? All right, let's keep scrolling. All right, so we go still talking about the beneficiary. Then we get to almost the end of the form. It talks about you signing. It is important as a petitioner that you sign. You can list your telephone number. You can also list your email. And then if you need an interpreter or anything of that sort, this is where you would list that on the form. But you would sign and date. It is required that you date, and you also check one of the boxes of petitioner statements, whether you can read and write English. Again, do not leave anything blank on this application. The rest of this application is collecting the lawyer's information. If you scroll down, Junior, scroll down. So it's just collecting. If you need an interpreter, for example, if you speak another language, you can say, I need an interpreter here. Oftentimes you can bring an interpreter with you. It cannot be a family member. It's best if you just hire a professional service. And then the rest of it is just collecting information on who completed the form. Whew. If only we could do the I-130 petition in 15 minutes in real life. But this is what the I-130 petition looks like. It is an anchor for many other petitions. It's also an anchor for the adjustment of status. So there'll be lots of other forms with it. I want Junior to show us the second form, which tells you how to fill out this information. So everything I've told you is on USCIS.gov. It's the directions. They're listed there for you. If you want to review them, you can go ahead and see that these forms are available to you. You should not pay for these forms, and the instructions are on USCIS.gov. And most of those questions that you're asking me, the answers are there on USCIS.gov. All right, we are at the 32-minute mark. I think it's important. Let's get some questions in. And then if anybody has specific questions about the form, I'll be more than happy to go back to that question for you. One of the questions Mo Franklin asked, can you file an I-130 for a child who is here in the US undocumented? Mo, the answer is yes. You can definitely file for an undocumented child. Again, you can file for anybody on that parental relationship. So long as it's a child 18 and under, they're not eligible to adjust, but children do not accrue unlawful presence. So they will not need a waiver, Mo. They can just go home, be processed, and come back. All right, let me see. 718-701-5720. Do we have a caller? All right, so we don't have a caller yet. I'll answer another question. Vic, as long as you're the legal parent and have your permanent residency or citizenship, that is correct. You can file for a child. So long as you have status, you can file for a child. The number to call in is on the board. If you want to call in, we can answer your questions for you. All right, the next question, the new form I-94 asking for a credit report and wants to know if anyone lived in the projects. Do you see more people getting rejected because of the new requirements? The I-4, good evening, Wolfgang Rockefeller. I love that name, Rockefeller. The I-944 is a new form. It's for public charge under the public charge doctrine. I have not had any cases that have been submitted and adjudicated using this form yet. This form just came out in, I think, February of this year, and then COVID happened. So I've submitted a lot of applications with the I-944, and that plays into the affidavit of support. But I haven't had any that have been adjudicated yet. So as soon as we get that, we'll see how that works out. We have a live caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Ride along. This is Deani. How may we help you? Caller, are you there? All right, I cannot hear the caller. Caller, are you there? All right, I'll take Alice's question. Alice Caliste Edwards, she said, what if you've already started the process and now the applicant is no longer working? Would that be an issue? It will be an issue when you go for your interview because you have to bring updated documents to the interview. So you'd have to bring updated pay stubs. You'd have to bring everything updated. So in the case where the individual is no longer working, I would say if you know by the time interview comes around, go ahead and get a co-sponsor if the person is not working. 718-701-5720 is a number to call in. This is Diani. Let me know if you're on the line. Good evening, caller. Hello. And it says, how long does it take for citizenship? It depends on where you live. Here in Tampa, Florida, it's about 4 to 6 months. New York is about 6 to 8 months. It really depends where you live. And I'm thinking you mean how long is a process with USCIS? I would say about 6 to 8, depends on where you live. And now we have COVID. All right, 718-701-5720. Do we have anybody on the line? All right. If you file for an adult child in another country, do they have to get a visa to enter the US for immigration interview? Mavis, no. If you file for an adult child, the process goes like this. When you file within the United States, and then you go, when it's approved, your file goes to the NVC, and then the adult child will be processed at the US consulate in the home country. Live caller on the line. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I heard you make mention about red flag if you're married like 2 times. What about if the person married first time and then went back home and got divorced and then came back up here and they had a second marriage, it didn't work, and they meet somebody that they're ready to settle down with? What would happen to that?
All right. So multiple marriages, if it's 1 or 2 marriages, I wouldn't say red flag. If you have multiple marriages, that is a red flag, especially if out of each marriage, you're filing an application with immigration. So marriage number 1 was back home with your wife, if I follow you correctly. Then you went home divorced. You have marriage number 2, and you're filing for an immigration benefit. That is not a red flag. However, marriage number 2 does not work out. So you divorce marriage number 2 and you now have marriage number 3 and you're seeking an immigration benefit because marriage number 2 didn't work out. You're getting into that red flag area. Like, are you really doing this for a green card? So you're getting into the red flag area.
I should add, if the last marriage, if the last marriage is the only time you send in an application, would that still be a red flag?
If the last marriage you've only submitted for an immigration petition 1 time, I would say no. I don't know your case. I don't know your case fully, but it doesn't sound like a red flag to me. If you've only had 2 marriages, out of 1 you're seeking immigration benefit, keep in mind all the rules follow. You have to prove that it's a bona fide marriage, all the documents you have to submit. So I'm not hearing red flag, but just, dot your I's and cross your T's.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Have a wonderful evening, sir. Live caller, do we have a caller on the line? 718-701-5720. All right. So Mo, if a child is in removal proceedings and you just filed an I-130, do you think the child will be able to interview? So Mo, once that child is in removal proceedings, it means the court, immigration court now has jurisdiction. So all the process will take place in the court proceeding. The case is no longer with USCIS. If you come into the US and get sick and didn't have time to get an extension, how can I get residence in the person? Glenda, I don't understand your question. Glenda, retype your question for me, please. Caller on the line. Good evening. This is RIdealong.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with?
Natalie.
Hey, Natalie. How are you?
I'm good. So I have a quick question. I petitioned for my husband, and he's here 3 years now on a green card. His I-130 was approved, and I want to file for his 2 kids who are both under the age of 18. Can I do that?
Yes, you can, because you're a step parent. So it's technically a child. It's technically your child, yes. So on the I-130, you're checking the box that says child because they're under the age of 18 and you got married to their father while they were under 16?
Yeah, they are actually 7 and 11.
Yes, so you can petition for them.
Okay.
In fact, it will go faster if you petition since you're the United States citizen.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for calling in. Anybody else on the line?
Hi there. Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
My petition is not
Caller, hold on. Turn down the background noise.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, caller.
Go ahead. I for me in 2010. At that point, I was married. I later had a divorce in about 2012, and she updated my status or something of the sort. In 2016, I then got married. About 3 months after that, the papers came through saying that they were ready to start the process. So I informed them that I'm now married again, and I have a son. They asked me to make a payment, an additional payment for my son and my husband, which I did, and send their passports and birth certificates and whatever. I did that and I've not gotten any response. I've emailed them once or twice, and they said that they don't have any visas available.
So what it sounds like, things were a little bit noisy in your background, but what's happened to you is that your preference category changed. So whoever petitioned for you would have petitioned for you as an unmarried child. Who was a petitioner? A parent?
She's not on the line.
She's gone. But caller, if you're listening, whoever petitioned for you might have petitioned for you in the category of unmarried. Once you got married, you moved down the line. It's almost like you were number 10 in line and you walk all the way to the back when you got married. So now it slows down your application a little bit. I would keep in touch with them just to see when a visa becomes available for married child of a US citizen, if that's the category you're in. Of course, I'm certainly assuming, but once you got married, you moved your place in line. I'll answer most questions. How many I-130 petitions can I file at the same time? Mo, 1,000. However, it'll come down to your financial ability to sponsor each and every single person on that petition. So Miss Evans, Nafisha, I think you were the one that dropped. So mom filed for you as unmarried, then you got married, so things got slowed down. So now you're in a traffic jam. So each year, there's a certain allotment of visas/green cards for married children. So because there's not enough, they keep bumping you to the next year. So eventually they'll catch up to you, but it's going to take some time. No, an adult cannot file for their niece or nephew. You can't file for niece or nephew. You cannot file for grandchildren. Can you explain what is 245? Do you mean 245A Spice Baffy or 245I? 245 is essentially a section of the Immigration and Nationality Act under which you can adjust. So you might be talking about Section A or Section I. I bet you're talking about Section I. It's where if a petition were filed for you before 1997, you can adjust even if you entered unlawfully. Spice, let me know if that's what you mean. Any other callers on the line? I think I've answered. Caller, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, good evening, caller. Who am I speaking with?
Lashana.
Good evening, Mashana. How can we help you today?
So my question is, how much do you have to make of the salary for you to petition for a spouse and a child? Like, if they're outside of the country.
I want you to go to uscis.gov and I want you to pull up the federal poverty guidelines. uscis.gov. Pull up the form that says federal poverty guidelines. And then you can look at how many dependents are on your taxes. So take out your tax return, look at how many dependents are on there. You count yourself and any amount of people you've petitioned for. Then you're going to count the other two. Then you're going to go straight across and you'll see the dollar amount based on whether you're military or non-military. And that will tell you the amount that you need to be making.
Okay, thank you.
You are most welcome. So Spice, I figured Spice, you were talking about 245I. So 245I of the Immigration and Nationality Act is pretty much an exception to everything I've just talked about earlier with regards to adjustment of status. So essentially, if somebody filed for you prior to 1997, if my USCIS gentleman is on the call, still help me, but I believe it was 1997. If somebody filed an I-130 petition for you prior to 1997 and it was approved and you enter the country unlawfully, you can still adjust under 245I. All right, Spice, I hope that answers your questions. That's a short way of saying you don't need a waiver for unlawful presence. You can still adjust under 245I of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Caller, good evening. RIdealong. How may we help you?
Hello. Good evening.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Good evening. Who am I speaking with?
I'm Samantha.
Good evening, Samantha. How may I help you?
My question, I'm good, thank you. Sorry. My question is, so someone is a permanent resident of the U.S. and they got resident status in May of 2018, and they've been in the Caribbean since March of 2020 due to the COVID. They're there. How long can they stay out without reaching out to the USCIS?
So they don't need to reach out to USCIS. Once you have a green card, USCIS is done with you. So you don't need to reach out to USCIS. Okay. What they need to do, March of 2020, so 6 months before their continuous presence is interrupted for naturalization purposes, 12 months before it is that they've abandoned their residency. So they have 12 months that they can stay, 12 continuous months that they can stay outside of the country before they should be reaching out to the local consular post in their home country. Does that help?
Sure, that helps a lot.
Thank you so they have a little time.
Okay, great. So they have some time. Thank you so much for that.
You're most welcome. How can I file for my mom? I am now a U.S. citizen. Chanel, you start by filing that form we've been discussing last week and this week, the I-130. The I-130 application you'll use to file for your mom. Spice, cool. I see that I've answered your question. What is the implication, Brenda Phillips said, for someone for future application processes who had a petition filed before through spousal relationship and it got to the point where the affidavit of support was requested, however the relationship fell through, and so I get what you're saying, Brenda. It's like yada 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 yada, you did all this and it fell through at the end. If there's a new spouse in the picture, then you can refile. If you're still with the same spouse and the financial position have changed, then you could go ahead and refile, because more than likely they would have closed that application. It all depends how long ago this was. But you can definitely refile with the current spouse, or if it's a new spouse, you simply refile. Hopefully your financial position has changed. Caller on the line, good evening. This is Right Along.
Hi, good evening. I have a question. I see that you can file the I-130 online. Is it a more accurate thing to file it online or do it through the regular way, paper mail?
It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you do it accurately. Some people are savvy and they can upload documents because you'll upload your supporting documents. Remember, the I-130 is not a standalone. We've been looking at it as a standalone here, but you have to upload what we call supporting documents. So if you're savvy enough, absolutely, you can file it online. It doesn't make a difference. Hyacinth John, good evening. You need to ask a question. Go ahead. Caller on the line, go ahead.
Hi, one question. I was on vacation for 6 months. That's going to be the beginning of January the 10th, and my 6 months would have been ended the 9th of July. I had a flight for the 4th of July, but it was canceled due to back home not opening. That's Grenada.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a critical position right now, so I want to know, should I go ahead with the filing of the extension or hold on to that?
Well, I would go ahead because you're saying July 4th is when your I-94 is expiring?
The 9th.
July 9th?
Yeah.
I would go ahead and file now only because July 9th, your I-94 expires. Grenada has not reopened. I would go ahead and file the extension with a fee waiver. So you do the extension of status and you attach a fee waiver.
Fee waiver?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You are most welcome. Miss Hyacinth John, you can go ahead and ask your question here because I can read it. I know you want to ask a question, but go ahead because we'll read your question. There is no age restriction for a brother filing for a sister. As long as you can establish these categories, parent, spouse, child, there's no age restriction. All right. So I will, Miss Hyacinth John, your question is one of those that I typically answer discreetly. So let's hypothetically say you, if you want, you can give me a call and we can talk about this. Or if you're calling for a friend, or asking for a friend, you and I can talk about this after the show. But typically for individuals that are in any kind, and this is hypothetically speaking, for individuals that are in any kind of abusive relationship and you're married to a US citizen spouse, and they're the ones that are causing the abuse, you do have the option to do a self-petition. 813-815-3529. And I can talk to you for about 10 or so minutes after, since it looks like you're writing in for a friend and you want to get some information. I'll be more than happy to pass that on to you. All right, thanks everybody. The questions are coming in. I hope I got to all the questions. Do we have any caller on the line? I don't see any. I think I've answered. I'm looking at all the questions to make sure I've gotten to them all. Put anti-file for niece and nephew, that is a no. That is a no. US citizen, no, you cannot file for a grandchild. Mr. Charles, you didn't correct me on 245I if it was 1997. I'll look that up, but I'm pretty sure it was 1997 is the year. Do you have another caller on the line? 718-701-5720. Thanks everybody for joining with us. We're answering questions as it pertains to immigration and all the changes that we're experiencing in immigration today. I think I got to everybody's question today. Wow, thank you. Thank you all. Party Grenada for posting that telephone number. I appreciate it. Absolutely appreciate it. We still have time for a couple more calls. Anybody else? Hello, Miss Kelly Charles Collins, one of my colleague and friends. Thank you for supporting me. From Ladies Who Leverage, thank you. All right, so it looks like we're going to wrap up today.
Hello?
Oh, we have another caller. Caller on the line, go ahead. Good evening, this is Ride Along Live.
Hi, good evening. I just joined the program. I'm not too sure if you spoke on this issue, but I'm just looking for some direction and clarification, okay?
Certainly. Who am I speaking with?
You're speaking to John.
Good evening, John. Go ahead, sir.
So I have a girlfriend. She's a US citizen. And we were discussing for some while about getting married and so on. And we wanted to take that step this year. So traveled to the US in January to try to make that happen. But we didn't get to, like get the marriage done and so on because of the COVID came along and so on. But we're still thinking about doing it. The place is not open up as yet, but I don't know if you could guide me along at that part, like if it's smart to even try to do same. I'm from St. Vincent. I'm not going back to St. Vincent yet. The borders and stuff are not open as yet. My visa, my 6 months expires in August. So I'm still here.
So here's the thing. John, I'm going to stop you there because I don't want you, as your lawyer or potential future lawyer, I don't want you to say anything on this program that could kind of talk about what intent you came into the United States with. All right. It's important when you come into the United States on a visitor's visa that you come with a non-immigrant intent, meaning you came here to visit, you were going to go to Disney World, and things changed. But it can't be, I came here to marry. So you're one of those that I think should call in, and you and I can talk a little bit about what adjustment of status could possibly look like for you. The 813-815-3529 number, I want you to write that down and let you and I have a conversation about, because I love my fellow Vinces. So I want to make sure you have some good information.
Okay, yes.
You have the number?
Yes. I have the number, right. So I'll giving you a call.
Yes, just give me a call and you and I can talk. Have a good evening, John.
Okay, then. Thank you. You
do
too.
Do you know how soon immigration would resume doing adjustment of status? I think they've started. My office here in Tampa has reopened, so I imagine at some point they're going to start getting back into action again. Now they have the furloughs coming, right? So we're going to have another issue there with all the furloughs that are going on with immigration. Junior, let me know how much time we have left, if I should keep going. We're in the Ask Me Anything. Play a little music, Junior. All right, guys, we are back. Jamaican, yeah, we love to dance spice. Do we have another caller on the line? We're gonna go for about 5 more minutes and then we wrap up. Caller, go ahead with your question. You're live.
Hi, good day. How are you?
Good day. I'm fine. And how about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. So I'm Lisa, and I'm calling to ask a question. Could you tell me, are you hearing me?
Yes, ma'am, I'm hearing you. I'm listening.
Okay, yes. What happened? I'm calling concerning a marriage. The person was married. They had reached the interview. In the process of getting a green card, and it was just to the interview. But what happened? The wife and they got divorced. So the wife denied the 130 after everything was finished. Was just for the interview. Could you tell me what else that person could do? Could they get like to go ahead with the same documents before that was filed, or they will have to do it all over?
So it all depends. This is one of those cases where it depends. If there was any evidence of abuse in that marriage, then the person can continue on their own to say, look, I was in a bona fide marriage. I have all the documents to prove it. In fact, when the interview is scheduled, that is one I would take the individual to the interview so that person can be interviewed and they show, look, it was a bona fide marriage. Through no fault of my own, this marriage ended. If they didn't show up for the interview, more than likely the officer would have closed the case.
Oh,
unfortunately, yes.
oh,
So if
okay.
they,
So
if,
that cause it to be passionately denied.
yes, because they didn't show, nobody showed up for the interview. So if the interview was scheduled, wife doesn't want to go, beneficiary doesn't show up, that case file will be closed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, essentially denied. It will be denied because they didn't show up.
Okay. So you're saying that they could go ahead and apply for themselves
if there has been evidence of abuse.
Passionately denied.
Okay.
Yes. Okay then. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Aaron Mark, American citizen, college student, married someone from outside the US you want to file. Is it a reason to get a co-sponsor? You only need a co-sponsor if you're below the federal poverty guideline. So again, you would go Mr. Mark to uscis.gov, look at your taxes, how much you're making, because even though you're in college, you could be earning, you could be making above the poverty guideline. So if you are above the poverty guideline, 125%, you do not need a co-sponsor. Ms. Adams, you can call 813-815-3529, 813-815-3529. All right, guys, we're at the 1 hour mark. I don't see any more questions, so we're going to wrap up. I have to say more music. Okay, we're doing music. But I do want to say a personal thank you to everybody that showed up today. I had a blast covering for Junior. I give him credit because for him to do this every day, talking for an hour, it was exciting. I had a lot of co-hosts in the house. Shout out Miss Lydia James and Miss Spice Baffy, all of the supporters who came in and kind of helped me through today. Let me share this with you. I was a little bit nervous when Junior said to me, do the show by yourself, because I rely on Junior to help me through the show. So when I got the message from him that I would be doing this by myself, I'm going to be honest with you all, I was nervous. I even made my notes. See, I made my talking points to make sure I stayed on track. And I try to stay within the time frame because I wanted to make Junior proud. Again, my name is Attorney Deani Winter Funde. And until next time, big hugs and everybody walk good. Back to you, Junior.
Hey, did you know that the census is due this year on April 1st? And guess what? This time we can finally count as Caribbean. This year, all you have to do is 1. Check the race box, and 2. Write in your country of birth or ancestry. You can answer by the paper form, online, or by phone. Everybody counts in Census 2020. So count as Caribbean. Yes, we count.